Everyone, we got a Heroes of the Storm balance patch notes for February 1st, 2022. One quick update that I don't think is actually mentioned in these patch notes. Blizzard said there was a fix coming for the download bug. For people who don't know what the download bug is, it's whenever you download HOTS, you download a 137 megabit patch, and you frequently end up downloading it more than once. I think it's like 3 times. So apparently the beta version of Battle.net, it's not actually a HOTS bug, it's a Battle.net bug, but apparently the beta version of Battle.net has a fix for that. And let's see if I remember how to do this. You can actually opt in to the beta version. Yeah, right there. So you go to the upper left-hand corner, go to settings, go to beta, switch to beta, and then apparently you won't get the download bug anymore. So that's the first thing I wanted to make a quick note of, because that bothers a lot of people. And obviously some people have data caps, and every time you launch HOTS, it can be kind of annoying. So. Not technically a HOTS patch, it's a Battle.net patch, but they did tell us a fix was coming, so I've been looking out for it for a while. So it looks like we don't get any reworks. We get 2 tank changes, 2 bruiser changes, 3 healer changes, and a bunch of range changes. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like a very big patch. Rhaegar is changed. Looks like Joe has not been changed. That's the biggest takeaway from looking at the top. Additional functionality. Upon reaching level 10, souls consumed and resurrecting is decreased from 100 to 75. So, okay, so you're level 10, you die, you res with 25 souls. That's not like the most impactful change, but it's there. Armor reduction increased from 15 to 20. Hellfire W. Damage per second increased from 30 to 33. So they buffed the Burning Rage effect of W build, and they buffed the Armor Shred of Q build. Okay, last time I looked at this seriously, AA build did have the highest ladder win rate, but it wasn't like a crazy win rate. So they basically buffed the other 2 options that aren't AA build at level 13. I wonder why they picked... This thing's always interesting to me, and I actually kind of want to check Hero's profile and go back a few patches, because Diablo has builds, and those builds are performing a certain way. So why did they pick those talents to buff in the builds as opposed to anything else? And I'm actually gonna do it this way. Diablo. So let's go back like just as far as we possibly can. We'll do all game modes. And then we'll do... Okay, so let's click on Hellfire. This is literally everything. This should be an enormous sample size of games. It's going to take forever to load, so we can move along while that's happening. ETC, health increased from 2250 to 2280. Health regeneration increased from 4.69 to 4.75. How big a health buff is that? 30 health? They increase the damage of Power Slide? ETC's talents are competing with the Chinese source in the volume. This is a true statement. All of ETC's talents are performing fine. It's ETC himself that's garbage, and it's just he's too fragile. A 30 health buff may be enough. Like, it's going to be very, very close. I don't think his ladder win rate ever really bobbled much. It was just his competitive win rate. So, that's the change they should be making. I just don't know if that's a big enough health buff. Reaper's Mark, damage per second increased from 1.75. Oh, okay. Was that's a 12.5% buff, essentially? No, it's more than that. It's a big buff. Touch of Death. Cooldown reduced. Okay. Cooldown reduced on the active. It's about 60 health. From level... Here's something you can do. It's, like, really easy. So, like... Stats roughly... It's a little bit more than double. But stats roughly double from level 0 to level 20. So, if you go from... If you get a 30 health buff at level 0, it's going to be like 60 health at level 20. It's a little bit more, but it's not a lot more. The wonders of compound interest, essentially. Damage when it's reduced from 90% to 60%. Ozerman, welcome back to the guest list. Thank you for the Prime sub for 18 months, because math. It's true, because math. Means you can survive like one additional probe. Hello? Probes for like 30 damage. You can survive like 2 additional probes. I guess it's level 0 numbers, but still, yeah. I don't know if this makes Memento Mori pickable. Like, these are just... This is just a baseline buff, right? This is a buff to a talent that I think is actually viable, but is underpicked because of the synergy the 2 W talents have, and a lot of people pick W7 and 16 because of that synergy. Shroud of Wisdom is very niche compared to the Unstoppable because of the 2-second delay before you actually get the spell armor, so you have to be into specific opponents where you're like, oh yeah, I'm about to take a bunch of damage and I'm not CC'd. So these are kind of whatever changes. That's a big buff. Does this work yet? Okay. Wow, so across all ranks in game mode, Hellfire actually has a 46.95% win rate. Memento would go from 3.325 pre-patch to 3.2, so a slight nerf. Yeah. I don't... Memento Mori was already never picked, and they made it worse, effectively. So that's weird. Additional functionality on Urel's D. Divine Purpose's cooldown is reset when Urel casts a heroic ability. Oh, that's interesting. So you could theoretically... Could you use this proactively? It's really hard to use this proactively. But even if you don't use it proactively, like even if you get caught in a bad spot and you're feel like you're forced to R, then you can now always DW or DE. So you can DE for a disengage, you can DQ for an extra heal, or you can DW for self peel. That's a nice buff. I think that's gonna take a lot of practice to get used to, just because it's on 120-second cooldown. I don't think you're gonna be comboing it together. Like, I don't think you're gonna E in. Like, even let's assume you're even E build, right? Let's assume that you have E7. I don't think you're going to E in DQ or DW R DE. Like, I don't think that's gonna be a thing. But I feel like with some practice, that's actually a fairly substantial playmaking buff. Maraud's Insight doesn't matter. The way Maraud's works now is just so bad that it's fundamentally flawed in terms of design. In order to make it pickable, the numbers would have to be broken, essentially. Which is something that, like, I didn't realize when I first started playing MOBAs in general, which is that even something that's, like, badly designed can be completely overpowered if you just buff the numbers enough. Like, it's not obvious in hindsight, but if you have to buff the numbers to, like, insane levels for something to be viable, then you should go back and look at the design of it. They buffed Aegis of Light. This is a weird thing to me, because no one plays defensive Yrel anymore. There were, like, 3 main playstyles of Yrel during HGC. There was the highly offensive Yrel. There was, like, a skirmishing style of Yrel that played both sides of the fight. And then there was a highly defensive style of Yrel that just went, you just light and you just eat on your team, and you basically always W people to away, and it was just about making sure your team lived. Yrel was, like, the premier double support offlaner for that style of play. She was just so good at making sure no one died, ever. And obviously in double support, if no one dies, you'll eventually win, assuming the column is drafted correctly. Since I came back, I've only really seen aggressive Yrel played, as opposed to defensive Yrel. I think defensive Yrel is actually really strong. But I just don't... But I actually even question if this is better than the heal on D at level 4. So that role has been taken over by Blaze. I mean, I wouldn't say it's been taken over by Blaze, because Blaze and Yrel were the 2 meta offlaners during HGC. Divine Favor, cooldown reduction increased from 2.5 seconds. So that's a buff to the build I was just talking about with the heal at 4. Holy Wrath passive splash damage increased from 30 to 35%. Holy Wrath is like a wave clear talent. It has some niche viability on shrines, but like the Armor Shred is so... The Armor Shred is clearly the best teamfight talent. Like, if you're just thinking about damage, the Armor Shred is clearly the best teamfight talent. So I don't know if this is going to shake up your L16 very much in competitive. And Holy Wrath already cleared a wave, so like increasing the splash damage doesn't really do much there. Okay, Devastating Charge win rate was 47% overall. Okay, now I'm gonna look at just high MMR and just draft modes. I don't have a command for that, but there you go. Malfurion Deep Roots, max mana gained increased from 10 to 14. Okay. Treant move speed increased to a 60%. Treant, what? They buffed Treant? For the record, I believe Treant is the highest ladder win rate talent at all tiers. So they buffed. I think this is an effort. They don't want to nerf. They don't want to nerf the sleep. This is what this feels like. They're like, guys, I don't really want to nerf the sleep. I don't see how we're going to nerf the sleep. What if we just buffed the other thing? Broccoli's better than sleep by win rates on ladder in various game modes in MMR. Sleep is obviously better in competitive. Treant's good. Treant is insane. So for people who don't understand Treant, I want to put this in perspective. A Treant with like 50 stacks hits as hard as a Worgen Form Greymane at level like 20. Can you get 50 stacks in a single ladder game? The answer is frequently yes. Like if you actually play specifically to stack the ability, you will frequently get 50 stacks. Now what that does is it allows you to solo kill people. if you go to Hero's Profile, download some replays of Mouth games where that talent was taken. You'll see a lot of Mouth one tricks who solo kill people. They stack the root all game and then they can look for solo picks. That's dumb. The reason that Treant was only occasionally picked in competitive was because it offered too much counterplay. Like half the roster has some sort of thing where you get a massive benefit. I went through this with Cascon once. So Alarak, it gives him something to E off of. Alarak really wants a target behind heroes that he can E off of. Well, Treant gives you an enemy target, so that's really nice. Anna gives you something else to Shrike for a little bit more self-healing, right? It gives Artanis something to W to. It gives Ariel another hope generator. It gives there was a big one. The big one in competitive during HUC was Tyrande. It gave Tyrande an auto target. If Tyrande has something to auto, her healing throughput is much, much, much higher. So like you would go for a pick, you would root the target, the Treant would come out, Tyrande would auto it, and you wouldn't get the pick because of Tyrande's extra healing from her autos. Between Loon's Grace and just getting QCDR. So like half the heroes in the roster have something where the Treant actually benefits them, and you can't pick it into those heroes at a high level of play. Like ladders, whatever. See, okay, so now Devastating Charge is a 51% win rate at high MMR. So the move speed increase is actually huge. So Treant averaged 2.5 autos. When I went and looked at it for competitive games, someone got rooted and I would count how many autos the Treant got. The Treant got 2.5 autos off on average. At a 60% move speed, I think that average might move to 3. I think it might get 3 autos off now. Which, depending on how many stacks you have, could be like 1,000 damage, right? Although you have to think of it as the increase. So it's only like half an auto increase in damage. And it's more likely to get those autos off because of the health increase as well. You can't just like auto it down. See, this is... Okay, so 52.68, 5.117. I want to understand why they buffed the 13 talents, and not the build. Social alignment bonus basic attack damage increased from 75 to 80%. Doesn't matter. Mana gain changed from 80 to 15% of Malfurion's max mana. Okay. Yeah, okay, that seems fine. Debuild is something... So movement speed is really important to Malf because he has to constantly go in and out of fights to play safely. But debuild is occasionally fine, particularly in double support. So... Ysera's Gift, bonus regrowth healing increased from 60 to 75%. That doesn't change what the talent does, so that's fine. Bonus regrowth duration increased from 3 to 5 seconds. What? That's a whole nother queue. Oh, you know what Revitalize does actually? Is this gives you bonus mana, right? So now Revitalize and Deep Roots will work together. That's not a good build, so that doesn't matter. But it's a nice little change, I guess, for people who like doing that. Moonlight Harmony additional functionality passive increases Moonfire's heal by 20%. We'd like Malfurion to be more reliable pick, so we're increasing the power of his level 16 talents. Additionally, we're interested to see if direct synergy between Deep Roots and Rhinos helps those talents turn a new leaf. It will not. It will not, for the record. But, interesting idea. Astral Communion bonus silence duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds. That's a nice little buff, actually. Those 16 changes are massive. Because it's not Emerald Dreams. Again, Emerald Dreams does not have the highest ladder win rate. The highest ladder win rate talent was Vengeful Roots. This kind of feels like a thing where they're buffing a talent that has the highest ladder win rate in the hopes that people will, like, pick it more. Because I think Emerald Dream might be the most popular talent. Malf gonna be meta? I mean, Malf was already meta. Malf was, like, one of the top 5 most played healers in CCL this season, I think. Well, okay, that's not true. assuming everyone had a Valimar, Malf would have easily been one of the most top 5 played healers in CCL this week. If you look at the teams that actually had someone who could play Malf, Malf was one of the most played healers. I don't think this makes Malf OP though. I think Malf is too hard to be OP. Does that make sense? Like I think Malf has been OP for like a long time, but there just aren't enough people who are good at Malf, and not even just like good at Malf mechanically, but like drafting him in the right situations and like building the draft around making Malf succeed. Because I've talked about this on stream before. I went and looked. So from the time Malf had Ice Block removed, I went and looked at every single HGC game that was played with Malf. Malf's average win rate was 50% from the time Ice Block was removed. Malf's win rate in HGC without a secondary save mechanic to make up for the fact that he doesn't really have a burst heal was 40%. So when I say that, I mean Garrosh into the fray kind of counts as a save mechanic because you can displace someone from getting blown up. Zarya counts as a save mechanic because it gives you a burst save. Another support counts as a save mechanic, right? Gust counts as a save mechanic because it forces the enemy team to disengage, which means they won't get their kill, right? So stuff like that. When Malf had none of those things, he had a 40% win rate in HGC. When Malf had one of those things on his team, he had a 60% win rate, which made him actually the highest win rate support. So you need one of those things when you draft Malf. And more than that, you also need to like play around it. Like let's say Falstad's your save mechanic. You just don't look aggressively. You play very defensively when Falstad is like not there and he's split pushing. Because you don't have your save mechanic. So it's a two-part thing. It's Malf's not being played at a very high level, and Malf is not being drafted correctly. If those two problems were fixed, I think people would realize that Malf is potentially a first pick, first ban sort of thing. And that was pre-buffs. So now he's buffed. So now he's even better. Technically, he's been buffed twice. Because I'm talking about HGC times, and this is the second buff he's gotten in the last year. This is huge, though. I don't think this changes Ysera's gift at all in terms of what it's good at. It's good in double support, and it's good at PvE healing, and that's it. It's just, they made it better at that, right? It's also, Ysera's gift is by far the easiest talent. You don't have to do anything to get value out of it, other than keep your Qs up, which you should be doing anyway. Nature's Balance and Moonlit Harmony, those are interesting. Because theoretically, the way it worked is if you take Nature's Balance, you increase Moonfire's area by 25% and regrowth duration by 3 seconds. If the increased area allows you to hit someone once every other W, it's actually more healing than Moonlit Harmony. But Moonlit Harmony is always more burst healing, even if you only hit one person with a W, right? So in competitive, burst healing feels like it always should be the pick because it's A, it's Malf's major weakness, and B, assuming you have 5 Qs running, which you should, it's just a massive burst heal. And then they made it even burstier. So this is still the burstiest option in terms of healing. This is still potentially the best sustain option as long as the increased area allows you to hit another person. Wonder if that's multiplicative. That's a good thing to check, actually. Those are really big. I mean, those are big buffs for good Malf players. I don't think that they will help bad Malf players, though. And most Malf players are bad. Like, literally, there's only one good Malf player in CCL. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. There's only one person who I think has acceptable mechanics on Malf. So there's really not a lot of good Malf players out there. They nerfed Rigor's health. They increased his mana cost on Q. They reduced totem health. And they reduced the duration of totem. Colossal totem was moved from 7 And they nerfed Z. Yeah, Tyrael was something that I counted. Tyrael Mouth was a thing. Mouth Medivh was a thing. Basically, if it could save someone from getting bursted out, that was my metric. Because Mouth can't really deal, particularly Mouth cannot deal with himself getting bursted. Like if you judgment a Mouth is dead. And in fact, we were scrimming against Tempo Storm on GFE. And we started doing, every time they picked Mouth, we would do judgment combos, and eventually they started picking Garrosh, and they would into the fray Mouth out when Mouth got judgmented. And that solved the problem. Right, so Mouth himself is a huge target. If you can figure out a way to kill Mouth, every Mouth comp will fall apart if you don't have a way to save the Mouth from whatever the thing that they're doing is. Earth Living Enchant, duration reduced, healing reduced. Earth Living Enchant was pretty borderline already, for the record. So I think that may kill it. Healing Totem. Duration increased, health reduced, healing per second reduced. So this is basically the old healing totem. Grounded Totem moved from level 1, attack speed slow reduced from 40 to 30%, spell power reduction reduced from 20 to 15%. Purification was nerfed, wow. Reduced healing duration from 3 to 2 seconds. No longer conditionally... This is an over nerf. I think this makes this talent nearly unpickable. That's unfortunate. Oh, they even nerfed Pit Fighter. I don't know if they nerfed the right things there. So Purification was a talent you took when you were the defensive side didn't matter. You took it because you were running an aggressive pick comp, so you actually had you basically picked it for the anti-heal. Particularly for the stacking anti-heal. Right? If you have, especially if you have another source of anti-heal, it becomes really good, really fast. And it was already borderline in that sense, because most anti-heal effects need to have like a 4-second duration to be really good. And it's just the fact that it was a very high number that made it like sort of viable, and it gave you some other utility, and it did, you know, some other stuff. But reducing it from 3 to 2 is actually a much larger nerf than you might think. Like no OCD, but then you're taking it for the defensive thing. I don't think that's a good reason to take the talent. I think if you like, spell power reduction is already a pretty good defensive tool, right? Like if I'm thinking defensively, attack speed reduction and spell power reduction is arguably better than 10 seconds off my cleanse. Purification was very much an aggressive talent, and they nerfed the aggressive parts of it. Which probably means... I mean, it might still perform well in ladder, for all I know. But I feel like in competitive, 10 seconds off a cleanse, you usually sort of, you know, just don't play aggressively when your cleanse is on CD. It's not, oh no, we have to play passively for an extra 10 seconds instead of... It's just not that big a deal. Range damage reduction from 40 to 35%. Quest completion hero hits reduced from 20 to 15. So they made W build easier. Bonus damage reduced on low blow. I don't think that matters. I think unless there's more changes, E build is still going to be ridiculously OP. Long pitch, cooldown reduction increased in 34 seconds. So they buffed W build. And they nerfed E build very slightly. Maximum channel duration reduced from 4 to 3 seconds. The funny thing about E build is that you generally, through the E out, and then immediately canceled it because you didn't want to keep on it, and you got a reset, so you just threw a new E out. Hero damage instances need to proc cooldown reduction and mana brief increase from 6 to 8. Okay, so E-build is substantially worse then. It got a damage reduction, it got a channel reduction, and it got a you have to hit more targets. I don't know if this is enough to bring W build back either. This is the thing about Stukov. Stukov is arguably the healer with the most moving pieces, if that makes sense. Where he has like a lot of pressure on each of his buttons, because his D is a defensive utility for the extra healing, and it's an offensive utility for the extra slow. And it's like he has to stand still to contribute to follow-up CC, which means he can't heal unless he already pre-healed. Like, he has the most moving parts of any support. In that sense, he's the most complicated hero. So it's hard to analyze fairly without looking at multiple games being played on him when you look at talent changes. For me, at least. He's always been the hardest to predict. I feel like if E-build has been nerfed enough that it's hard to get value out of, people will move back to reactive, not W build. And I feel like reactive will still be good, because reactive was never really nerfed. It was nerfed slightly, but it was never nerfed to the point where it was unplayable. It's just that E-build was buffed past it. So if E-build is now bad, or if E-build is now worse, if reactive ends up being better, we're just going to move to reactive. But Stukov was still being first pick when reactive was the build. So I don't think Stukov's place in the meta is going to shift at all. I just think his build might change. Damage reduced on Q. Damage. Which one is Wrath? I'm terrible with remembering. I think Greed is PvE, right? Oh, Wrath is the basic attack talent. Okay. You think E-build is the most annoying oppressive build? Because of such long range U2 sounds. Yeah, I mean, it's a very annoying build to play against. That's fair. I don't really factor that in. Developers have to consider that. Developers have to think about, you know, what is the most annoying. If something is annoying to play against, people aren't having fun, they're not going to play the game. But like sometimes something is annoying to play against, but if you play around it, it's actually not that strong. Junkrat is a good example of that. If you just don't let them have a second poke hero and you play around traps constantly, Junkrat actually isn't that hard to deal with. But playing around traps 24/7 is so annoying. Like, pro players hate it. People ban Junkrat out of spite in a lot of cases, not because he can't be played around or drafted around it. It's annoying. But they do it. You know, they do it anyway because they're trying to win. It doesn't matter if they're annoyed as long as the odds are in their favor. Additional targets increased from 2 to 3. Impact damage increased. Grunt explosion damage reduced. Grunt movement speed increased by 50%. They made Demonic Invasion better at team fighting. Asmodean's win rate has consistently settled above our preference after the increase in Global Annihilation's damage scaling from 2.5 to 4% per level, so we're knocking it down a peg. We're also trying to diversify how players use Demonic Invasion so it doesn't feel like the right option is always cast it on enemy structures. For the record, Demonic Invasion is a better team fight than the other R is. It's just that it also hits buildings. So buffing a talent to encourage a behavior that was already correct and people were winning with it, I think that, yeah. That's a nice Asmo buff. Oh, they changed Genji. Additional functionality. Landing near enemy heroes slows them by 30% for 2 seconds. What is near in this context? Like, is that range 3? Is that range 5? I assume it's been data mined, and I assume someone in chat already knows the answer. If that's like range 2, that's pointless. If that's like range 5, that's potentially OP. Especially if it's paired with Agile Dismount. Agile Dismount's one of those things that's actually very hard to use. Change functionality. Jumping over terrain with cyber agility increases Genji's move speed by 25% and grants stealth for 4 seconds. Is that good? Like, what does stealth really do? Stealth gets you off the minimap. Yeah, the move speed buff on, like, this is a huge change. The grunt movement speed increase, because it makes it more likely that you'll get hit by the explosion. It's a really good point. You can jump over fort keep and drop back. You can't drop aggro. Fort and keeps, they have true sight. You can drop tower aggro, but not fort aggro. I guess okay, I see what you're saying. I mean, if you're out of range of the fort, I'm just trying to think, like, this is a level 1 talent, right? This is a level 1 talent. Does that help you gank at all? It doesn't seem like it would help you gank. It doesn't seem like it puts... And it's only 4 seconds, so it's not even like you'll be able to, like, D over a wall and then true stealth and wait for someone to make a bad rotate or something, right? The movement speed is actually pretty big. Most stealth effects give half a second of unreadable, yes. The movement seems really big. I just don't know if the stealth is going to matter. I could be wrong. Bear in mind that I'm of the opinion that E-build is only particularly good if you're allowed to go Dragon Strike. Or not Dragon Strike, Dragon Blade. If you're going X-Strike, I actually think all of his other talents are better. Like, you just, except for 16, because there's only E talents, you just don't go E-build. So, and I think people should, for the most part, be going X-Strike. So, buffing any talents that aren't E talents, in my mind, buffs the way you should be playing Genji currently. The stealth kicks in at apex of jump, not the moment you press D, though. That's true. I feel like that's a nerf. I feel like this is an overall nerf. I actually think that the stealth does not make up for the lost 2 seconds of move speed. Yeah, I'm gonna call that a nerf. Until someone gives me video evidence of tech that proves otherwise. Hero hit quest requirements reduced from 35 to 30 and 75 to 60. Shuriken charges refunded increased from 2 to 3. That's a nice little buff. Cyber Shield, additional functionality. Genji dodges 1 heroic basic attack every 5 seconds. Dodge passive removed. Oh, they added dodge to Cyber Shield. Wait, wasn't Cyber Shield? Oh, Cyber Shield is the 50 spell armor. So they buffed it and added it to another talent that already existed. It's really important to note that the dodge isn't just like 100 physical armor. It's not like you get auto and dodging damage. It actually prevents add-ons from working. So, like, if you are against my Ev and you take dodge and she W's you, like, you don't get tethered. At least it used to work that way. I assume it still does. So it's like you don't get hit at all. It's not like you don't just take damage. So there were matchups where dodge was really important. Now, Genji's enough of a niche hero now because of nerfing and being hard that, like, people don't really think of stuff like that. But is having 50 is 50 spell armor relevant for that though? Yeah, Zero was one of the big ones because Zero couldn't Vorpal after you. I don't know. Two and a half range. Okay, so that's pretty garbage. Arcane, are you speaking? Yeah, like, again, it was not a bad talent. It just, and technically this is a massive buff to it because now you also get 50 spell armor in your W's. So that's a pretty nice buff. Steady Blade. I think Final Cut is still better. That is a pick thing, Sir Riff. So that's something that people would do, is they would D over the wall with, particularly with Agile Dismount, and then they would body block. And then when things got too intense, they would E out over the target to get some damage. Genji has a lot of, like, little combos you have to learn about whether or not you're going in with D or and out with E or vice versa. And some of them are affected by talents, and some of them are affected by maps. Agile Dismount was particularly better on Braxis, and you would more frequently D in and E out. Whereas on a lot of maps, particularly if you went E4, you would E in and D out. Okay, so this is arguably a buff to a talent that most people don't use correctly. I think this is a nerf. This is a small buff, but it's only... Shuriken Mastery, in my opinion, is only really good if you go Shingen. And Shingen doesn't touch, so whatever. This is a buff. This is an irrelevant buff. I also think this is an irrelevant buff because I don't think Genji's non-ult upgrades are worth looking at. That feels like a whole series of bad changes. I don't know. I'm okay with this one. I think it's a little bit weird because it conflates two different things. You want the dodge for specific matchups and you want spell armor. Arguably the shield is always better than the spell armor. So I don't know about that. They buffed Wolfheart. Okay. Additional functionality. Basic attacks during inner beast reduce healing fountains cooldown by half a second. What? Oh, God. Oh, that hurts my brain. Okay. Okay, so here's the thing. Greymane would frequently pre-tap at 55 seconds in order to do bruisers. So it would take you 20 seconds to do bruisers, which with Inner Beast up, you did how many attacks is that? What's Greymane's attack speed with Inner Beast running? 0.75? His baseline attack speed is 1. Right? And Inner Beast increases it by 50%, yeah. Okay. So 30 attack. So in 20 seconds, you'll get 15 seconds of Fountain CDR if you're attacking constantly. Like, let's assume you're literally attacking constantly. When does Fountain come off cooldown? So Fountain's a 2-minute cooldown baseline, which is 120 seconds. So... 1, 2... After 60 seconds of attacking constantly, you'll still have 15 seconds left. With the bruiser camp? Oh no, you take bruisers with Q. You kite the camp around in a circle. It should take like 20 seconds. I think I'm talking about right at level 2, right? Because that's when you would get it. Like you pre-tap it for 55 seconds, remount, go to bruisers, do bruisers right as they spawn at 1 minute. So if you constantly auto-attack, you can essentially tap roughly 40% more, but you're not going to be constantly auto-attacking. I mean, the CDR on the Fountain would allow you to tap after the push. So you could get bruisers, you would be at full health because you pre-tapped, you push with the camp. That just seems terrible. I'm gonna say that's terrible. Like even on BOE would be the best use case, right? If you were allowed to just straight race. Even on BOE, I don't think you would actually get in an extra relevant tap. Oh, you know what this is gonna be OP in though? ARAM. That is an OP ARAM talent. It could be okay. It potentially is pickable on shrines. Like you pre-tap for a shrine, and then you auto constantly, and you have another tap up before the shrine ends. The other 4s are kind of meh, though. No. Stealth is really good. The fact that you can use stealth to just disjoint stuff is incredibly relevant. Like, the stealth is very good. Okay. I don't think that's a massively significant change for competitive, at least. I'll be interested to see it in scrims. Maps where you can tap a lot and fights go... See, not only do you have to fight a fair amount, but fights have to go on for a while. Right? So Shrines is a map where fights can go on for a while, but generally I don't think they can go on for more than like a minute and a half. So that's like very borderline. Sky fights can kind of go on for a little bit. It depends on the comps though, because some comps are just like, we're not going to win the fight, let's just trade and split push. And Greymane comps are very good at doing that. Greymane comps are very good at not fighting on Sky, because you can generally get more value just by pushing. Garden fights can go on for a while. Garden and the wells are relatively close every fight on Garden, especially early. Volskaya? Could be pretty good in Volskaya. I just don't know if it's better, right? That's the... I'm thinking of situations now where it could be good, but my question is it better? And it's... I don't think it's about getting 2-in-1 fight. I think it's about skirmishing and being on the map more early mid-game. But, like, you don't have... It's not just... You just want to be away from the enemy team as Greymane. You want to be hitting a building or hitting a camp in the early mid-game. Like, you don't want to be skirmishing. I don't think that's a good playstyle for the hero. So if that's the benefit, then it only benefits you when you're playing the hero not well. So that's not a great benefit, in my opinion. Like, if you go watch Lutano play Greymane, and Lutano had by far the highest Greymane win rate in CCL, he did not hit heroes from, like, 1 to 13. He hit buildings. No, it's not enough sustain for offlane Greymane to exist. Running Wild, additional functionality, reduce Dark Blades into stage cooldown by 1 second. That's actually pretty good. Offlane Greymane, well, offlane Abathur with a Greymane has always been a thing. This does technically make that marginally better, I suppose. It's really offlane Abathur, because once you get into the late game, it's Abathur who's side-soaking, not Greymane. Cooldown reduction increased from 20 to 24 seconds. Okay. Six-second CD bullet seems insane. It's pretty good. I actually like the Running Wild change a lot, because I think that... So Running Wild was pretty much always taken with bullet by some players during HGC, particularly Quacknix. And basically, it makes the range of bullet and the range of Darkflight basically identical. It's like 12 and 9. Or 12 and 9.5 or something. So when you're going for one-shot comps, Running Wild is, in my opinion, by far the best talent to take at 13. You don't want to take the movement speed because you're not skirmishing. You're not going in and going out. Like, you're not poking. Right? Running Wild, and then after you do the one-shot, you want to get back out. So having this cooldown reduction for the getting out part is actually really nice. I think it's a really good change. At this point, so the most common level 20 talent for Greymane in competitive is Blunderbuss, right? Which basically turns your auto attack into a poke ability. At this point, you wouldn't be using Bullet for one-shotting people, you'd be using Bullet to poke. So the question you have to ask is Gilnean Roulette better poke than Blunderbuss? And I think in some comps it might actually be true that Gilnean Roulette is better poke than Blunderbuss. But again, that's something I'd have to see. But like, Triple Bruiser or something? Oh, they buffed Nova. Or they changed Nova. Required stealth duration reduced from 4 to 2 seconds. Bonus pinning shot slow increased from 15 to 20%. That's a nice change. Yeah, it's a 6-second cooldown at that point. Requires stealth duration reduced from 2 to 1 second. Mana per second increased from 2 to 3. That's also a nice change. That's actually big buff. Cost and cooldown reduction reduced from 50 to 60%. So for anyone who's never played with Rapid Rejection is a dismount talent. You basically put your clone, you watch people rotate, you wait till they mount up, and then you just rapid rejection on them. And you get the dismount, and then you, like, it's your clone. It's not a big deal. Like, your clone's not in any danger. And you can use it to block skill shots, and, like, it's very versatile, but requires a lot of attention. So buffing rapid rejection is actually, like, huge for good Nova players. Hollow stability, additional functionality, reduce the cooldown of Ghost Protocol by 15 seconds. That's a nice little quality of life change. That's a nice little change. I don't think... So hollow stability, in my opinion, is not that great for the way you generally want to play Nova, but giving it a secondary functionality maybe makes it better. You shouldn't be using Ghost Protocol that often, to be fair. With Blunderbuss, you have a fully working bullet with poking A. With the alt upgrade, don't you get a weaker bullet with just normal A? You get a weaker bullet with normal A, but the question is is the weaker bullet more poke, and do you need poke? Because sometimes you just need poke. Like, you want to have a you guys want to add a really hilarious change to Gilnean Roulette? I have a fun one that I thought about way back when. So, Curse Bullet does not affect vehicles. Make it so that Gilnean Roulette removes that caveat, and Gilnean Roulette now causes Curse Bullet to affect vehicles. It's only going to matter on 2 maps. But man, would it be funny on those 2 maps. Isn't percent still capped though? Yes, it is. But it's still going to be doing a ton of damage. Like, it'd be hilarious. Is Odin a vehicle? Odin is a hero. The only 2 vehicles in the game are Volskaya Protector and Dragon Knight, I believe. I feel like I'm missing one that used to... Oh, Garden of Terror used to be vehicles, but now it's not. Additional functionality, Curse Bullet can be fired from inside a vehicle. That's an idea. Change functionality. Hitting enemy hero reduces snipe's cooldown by 2 seconds and refunds half its mana cost doubled against heroes. That's cool. Bonus damage increased. Oh, they buffed one in the chamber. Okay. Cooldown reduced from 50 to 60 to 50 seconds. Oh, that's actually a huge change. Precision Barrage, cooldown reduction reduced from 30 to 25 seconds. So these are all buffs. These are just all straight buffs to Nova. Okay. I think Nova is very hard to play and is somewhat underrated because she's very unforgiving. Well, anytime you have a hero that can do a lot of damage but lacks mobility, that hero is going to be unforgiving. Level 20 is a nerf, isn't it? It's technically a nerf, but if you take into account the level 10, it's basically now the same talent. Right? They just made it so that these 2 changes together ended up so that only the 10 was a buff, and this is exactly the same. Yeah, I don't think... Nova's not going to, like, massively change or anything. She's just a little bit better. But a little bit better is usually a good place to start people getting interested in playing her more. I think, like, Droplets is a GM Nova player, right? And he plays a lot of Nova, and he does well with it. I think Nova's in an okay spot. I think people just... There aren't enough people who actually like playing her for us to see a lot of her in, like, competitive. But, like, in 2015, 2016, Valo was very, very meta. And Nova actually had a positive win rate into Vala in competitive at the time. And I think that's still true. I think Nova is actually really good into the current version of Vala. But I think it's harder to play the Nova than it is to play the Vala. And I think it's harder to draft the Nova because Vala comes with the wave clear and Nova doesn't. But like if you address those problems with the drafting, then I think Nova would actually be good into Vala. And Vala is very meta, so Nova should be meta. But I think Nova is significantly harder to play. Because she's very unforgiving. And she's unforgiving in multiple waves. Dino is picking Nova versus Valoranzo. That does not surprise me. Cooldown increase from 12 to 14 seconds. Additional enemy heroes and minions drop minerals on death. Gather minerals to reduce warp violence. Cooldown by 0.75 seconds. Wait, so you have to go pick up the minerals when minions die? Nova and BOE. Nova and BOE is very good. Nova was actually played a lot on Towers of Doom as well at one point. I hate this so much. Because here's the thing. As Probius, you never want to step up to where the minion was. You never want to step up that far. You're a ranged hero. And this isn't like a globe, right, where your tank can pick it up for you. This is, you have to put your fragile little Probass body on the enemy team side of the map if you want to do this. This is going to drop his win rate from people going to pick up the minerals, thinking, oh, I should pick those up, and then dying constantly, when you should never do that. I don't like it when design baits you into play that is bad. I don't think that should ever be a thing. They pick both. I think Droplets is preference a little bit towards triple tap, but he's also usually trying to kill frontline. Triple tap is actually really good at killing frontliners. I don't like the Warpin Pylon in CDR. The CDR is really good because it allows you to set up pylons where you want them, which can change very rapidly, but... I hate the stab comment, and I hate this change. Good talk. Damage bonus increased on Warp Resonance. Cooldown reduction increased from 10 to 14 seconds on Turbocharged. Heroes hit required reduced from 4 to 3. Pulse damage increased from 71 to 78. That's a nice little buff to Particle Accelerator. Damage per second increased from 30 to 35. That doesn't matter. Cooldown reduced from 4 to 3.5. That's a fairly... That's not as like a huge nerf, but it is a nerf to cannon build. Null gate damage increased from 17 to 19. I hate this change so much that even though I think like this is fine, that I'm gonna say that this is just a bad Probius patch. I think his win rate will go down, and I think his win rate will go down just because people are dying more on the hero. Which is something we could actually look at. People could actually check. Okay, so auto build was the highest win rate talent at 13 for Diablo. So they're buffing these two to be closer to cruelty. Okay, I can kind of see all that. We did talk about that when we went over the rail patch notes. Tracer. Oh, good. Mockery will be thrilled. Cooldown between uses increased from 2 to 3 seconds, so they nerfed 1-2 punch. Okay. Healing. Oh, they nerfed Pulse Generator. Rip Tracer. Movement speed duration reduced from 1.5 to 1.25 seconds, and Jumper was shield amount reduced from 8 to 6.5%. See, I don't think this will affect Probe's win rate at, like, high MMR. I think this will affect Probe's win rate at low MMR, because I literally think his average deaths per game is going to go up. Those are really substantial nerfs. I hate touching Pulse Generator, because Pulse Generator is carrying Tracer's win rate. Like, I think... Tracer's level 4s may have the single largest discrepancy between win rates of any level 4 talent tier, where Pulse Generator is literally making the hero viable. So when you touch Pulse Generator, you're not just being like, oh, you're nerfing one talent. You're like, is the hero still viable? Like, you actually have to ask, is the hero still viable whenever you touch Pulse Generator? Like, that's how important Pulse Generator is. To her playstyle. So oh, they fixed the Mac bug. This actually matters because one of my Coffee, who's on my NGS team, plays on a Mac. So oh, this was the thing where it was lasting for a second less than it was supposed to, right? Yeah. Oh, they fixed the spread volley bug. I'm actually surprised they fixed the spread belly bug, because that didn't get reported until like really recently. And these two things were both reported. This one was actually banned in CCL, so okay. And that's the patch. So, good Diablo change, apparently. Like, this was in fact, they didn't want to nerf AA build, they wanted to bring the other builds up to match, and it looks like 13 was in fact the best talent tier to buff to do that. EDC, a little bit of a health buff, fine. Mathael, small buff to his baseline kit. Urel, interesting change. We're gonna have to see if it matters. Obviously, no nerfs. Mouth buffs, Rhaegar nerfs, Stukov changes. I don't think the asthma changes are particularly relevant except for the R thing. Genji burfs? It's like buffs and nerfs. Greymane, I don't know how much those changes actually matter. Nice changes for Nova. I hate the Probius changes, and Tracer was... No, I don't think he respawns if he has 75 souls. What happens is if he has 100 souls, he respawns with 25 after 10, and only after 10. That's my understanding. You still can't res unless you have 100 souls, but when you res, you'll only do 75. Cascon, thank you for the prize. Wait, this game has patches? It does indeed. Welcome back to the guest list. This is a Chair League shirt. I actually got this for being the #1 Chair League caster. For those of you who aren't familiar, Chair League was sort of the precursor to NGS and Heroes Lounge. And it had community casting, just like the NGS and Heroes Lounge do. And I cast something like 485 games of Chair League. I had the most games casted of Chair League by like an enormous amount. Halorn was second place. And so the guy who started Chair League, I'm actually kind of sad. So I think he had some social anxiety issues, and basically what he wanted to do was have like a turnkey system where the mouth change is good. Sleep Root is still in, but they buffed the other 2 level 1s. Also, they buffed all of his 16s. I'll just let you bask in the glory of his new 16s. And Broccoli now moves 160% movement speed. And that's the end of the patch note stream, so I gotta find someone to host. Is anyone cool streaming? Man, Antihero's been playing a lot of HOTS lately. Those of you know, Antihero was a very good offlaner during the HGC era, and he nearly made it into HGC several times, but never quite got on the right team. He was famous for being a Chen player at the time, and Chen was not meta. I mean, I guess I'll just host Hasu. So, it depends. Broccoli used to benefit from Tyrael E, but if it depends on how they implemented the movement speed up. If they made it so that the baseline movement speed is 100% and it just moves 60% faster, then it will benefit. But if it's coded as a buff, then it won't double buff. Alright. That's going to be it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. Remember the stream where we never lose, we always win, or we learn something, and learning is always a win. Have a good night, everyone.